Okay, this can kind of be a tough, confusing concept, okay? You got this, and this sheet here is just a guide, okay, to help you on this. Okay, here's my job. It says find the slope and y-intercept of the graph of the equation. So you put slope equals y-intercept equals, and you can abbreviate. You can put y-in, okay? Well, here's the problem. In order to know the slope and the y-intercept, the y variable has to be on one side of the equation all by itself. You can't have anything with it. So here's the procedure you're going to use to actually get the y by itself. First, we're going to circle our y term along with its multiplier. So it has a multiplier of 2. It's the y, okay? That's what I wrote over there, so it's the y. And then I circle it. Now, we need to get any term outside to 0. Now, that can be a little confusing. So what you're going to do is make this imaginary wall on this side of the equation. You have a negative 6 outside. So you're going to get that to 0 by adding 6. But you can't add 6 to 3 because 3 has an x. The 6 is a constant, meaning it doesn't have a variable. So because 3 has an x and 6 is a constant, we put plus 6 behind the 3x. Okay, now, that's why it says be careful looking for like terms. Okay, you see 6 is a constant. I don't have any numbers with no x with no variable over there, so I put it behind everything. Now, quick rewrite the equation so x comes before the constant. So over here you got the 2 times y. Now what that means is you need the number with the x, 3x, to come before the 6, which it pretty much already does. Okay. Now make sure your y multiplier is positive. Okay, that 2 is positive, so I don't need to read on. I only need to keep reading if it's a negative. Now you're going to divide every number or term in the equation by the y multiplier. So you're going to divide all of these by 2. And now the y is by itself. But when I divide, I need to be careful. See, if I divide 3 by 2, that's a decimal. So if you get a decimal, I want you to leave it as a fraction. 3 over 2x. Plus, 6 divided by 2 is not a decimal, that is 3. Now I know my slope and y-intercept. The y-intercept's the constant at the end. It's 3 because you got mx plus b. Y-intercept's the b, and then 3 over 2 is my slope. Okay, example number 2. Circle your y term along with its multiplier. It's being multiplied by 3. We need to get any term outside to 0. Okay, by outside I mean on this side of the equation, right there. It's like an imaginary wall. So I have a plus 6. To get that to 0, we subtract 6. Now 6 is a constant. The negative 2 is an x term. So again, we put minus 6 behind the negative 2x. Okay, so rewrite the equation at that point. 3.y equals negative 2x minus 6. Oh, sorry. Remember, I need to find the slope and the y-intercept. And again, I can't accomplish that until I have the y by itself. Okay, now make sure your y multiplier is positive. It is. Okay. Switch every number in the equation to, okay, never mind. It's already positive, so I don't need to worry about any of that stuff. Now divide every number or term in the equation by the y multiplier. So you need to underline that, this, and divide by 3. Okay, so these cancel. Now negative 2 divided by 3 is a decimal. So I keep that as negative 2/3 x. Negative 6 divided by 3 is not a decimal. If it's got a minus, we divide it as a negative 6. It's negative 2, so I put minus 2. So my y-intercept is the constant at the end, negative 2, and the slope is the x coefficient, which is negative 2/3. Okay, and these are my answers. Okay, the next problem. slope, and y-intercept. So you got to get the y by itself to be able to tell what the slope and the y-intercept are. So circle your y term along with its multiplier, but this time my multiplier is a negative because a minus in front of the 3 means our 3 would be a negative. Okay. Now get any term outside to 0. So make the wall, okay? And that 18x, you have to get that to 0. So it's positive, so to get the 18x to 0, you would subtract 18x, and now that's 0. But that's an x. 18's an x, 15's a constant, so I put minus 18x behind the constant. Now rewrite the equation so the x comes before the constant. So over here you got negative 3 times y. You need to rewrite this so the negative 18x comes before the positive 15. So I want negative 18x first, followed by the 15. Now make sure your y multiplier is positive. If it is negative, switch every number in the equation to its opposite. Well, we have a negative there. I want a positive there because I want to be able to divide by a positive. Just trust me on this. So make that positive, and the 18 is going to become positive, and then the 15 goes from a positive to a negative. Okay? Now, divide every number or term in the equation by the y multiplier. The y multiplier is 3. So I divide all of these by 3. And then those can cancel. So 18 divided by 3 is 6. It'd be 6x though. Negative 15 divided by 3 is negative 5. So I put minus 5 if it's negative. So my y-intercept is the constant, negative 5, and my slope is 6. It's the rate of change of the line. Every time x grows by 1, the y value grows by 6. Because you multiply whatever the x is by 6. Okay, example 4. Stick to your steps. Circle your y term along with its multiplier. There's my y. It has a multiplier of 3. Now I'm going to make that wall there. Now you need to get any term outside of this over on this side to 0. Be careful when looking for like terms. So to get a 4x to 0, I would subtract 4x. Now I do have an x on this side, so I would be able to subtract 4x from the 2x because those are like terms. That's 0. And now rewrite the equation. So you got 3 dot times y. Now you want your x term to come first, but you got to do a little math with the x term. 2 minus 4 is negative 2x, and then minus 12. Now make sure your y multiplier is positive. If it's negative, okay, it's positive. Or if it's negative like it was up here, you just switch it to positive and switch all the other numbers over to the other side to their opposites. Okay, now divide every number or term in the equation by the y multiplier. So divide by 3. So y equals, you got to find your slope and your y-intercept. Okay, negative 2 divided by 3 is a decimal, so I leave that as negative 2/3 x. Negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4, so I put minus 4. So the y-intercept would be negative 4, and my slope would be negative 2/3. Okay, example 5. 2x plus 6y equals 12. You're trying to find the slope and the y-intercept. I got to get the y all by itself on one side of the equation. So circle your y term along with its multiplier of 6, and then I make the wall. Any term outside of this needs to go to 0. That 2x got to go to 0. Now I also need to subtract it on this side, but it can't be subtracted from 12. 12 is a constant, meaning it has no letter behind it. But the 2 certainly does. It has an x. So I put minus 2x. Okay, now rewrite the equation so x comes before the constant. Again, you want 6 times y. You want the negative 2x to come before the 12. 12 is positive, so it's plus 12. Now make sure your y multiplier is positive. It is. Now divide every number term in the equation by the y multiplier of 6. Okay, negative 2 divided by 6 is a decimal. Okay, so I keep it negative 26x. 12 divided by 6 is not a decimal, it's positive 2, so plus 2. So the y-intercept is 2. The slope would be negative 2 over 6. Now I will accept negative 2 over 6 in an answer. I will also accept negative 1/3 as an answer, because these could be reduced by dividing them both by 2. I will give you credit either way. Okay, example 6, slope y-int. Getting the y by itself. Circle your y term along with its multiplier of 2. Any term outside needs to be taken to 0. By outside, I mean any term on that side of the equation. So you have a 7 there, okay? Now 7's a constant. It doesn't have a letter. Do you have anything over here without a letter? You don't, so you put minus 7 behind it. Okay, so rewrite the equation so x comes before the constant. Pretty much already does, but I'm just going to make sure 3x comes first, then the constant. Make sure your y multiplier is positive, the 2, it is. Okay. Now divide every term number in the equation by the y multiplier. So 2 is what we're dividing by. Okay, so 3 divided by 2 is a decimal, 1.5. So I'm going to keep that 3 over 2x. And negative 7 divided by 2 is a decimal, so I'm going to put minus 7 over 2. So the y-intercept is negative 7 over 2, and the slope is 3 over 2. By the way, if you had to graph that, you would want to divide your y-intercept. It'd be negative 3.5, but since we don't have to graph, that's good enough. Okay, example 7. 5x minus 2y equals 12. We're finding the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, remember, we have to get the y by itself. So circle your y term along with its multiplier. There's my y. It has a multiplier of negative 2. So I'll make it plus negative so I know for sure that that's a negative. There's the wall. Any term outside on this side of the wall has to be taken to 0. Okay, so you got a 5x. So I subtract 5x. Now that's 0. Now I can't subtract 5x from the 12 because 12 is a constant. 5 is an x, so I put minus 5x behind my 12. Now rewrite the equation so the x comes before the constant. So you got negative 2 dot y. Put your negative 5x first, and then your positive 12. Okay. Now make sure your y multiplier is positive. It is not positive. Okay. If it's negative, you need to switch every number in the equation to its opposite. So that negative 2 is now going to become a positive 2. The negative 5 becomes a positive 5, and the positive 12 becomes a negative 12. Okay, now divide every number or term in the equation by the y multiplier. So I want to see underlining all 3 of them and putting 2 underneath. Those can cancel. Now y is by itself. So 5 divided by 2 is a decimal. Okay, it's 2.5. So I keep it as 5 over 2x. Then I take negative 12 divided by 2, that's negative 6. So I put minus 6. So my slope is 5 over 2, or my y-intercept's negative 6. I usually start by identifying my y-intercept, and 5 over 2 is the slope. Okay, example 8. 3x plus 4y equals negative 3x plus 12. We're getting the y by itself, so I can find the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, circle your y term along with its multiplier, which is 4. Okay, make that wall. We need to get any term outside to 0. Okay, so any term outside this side of the wall, the 3x has to be taken to 0. So that's 0. Now that had an x. I can do it here then. Okay, I don't put it at the end if I can find something to match it up with. So rewrite the equation so x comes before the constant. So you got 4 times y. Now your x comes first, but you got to take negative 3 minus 3. It's not 0. Negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6 plus 12. Okay. Make sure your y multiplier is positive. It is. Now divide every number or term in the equation by the y multiplier. So I'll take negative 6 divided by 4. That's a decimal, so I keep it negative 6 over 4x. 12 divided by 4 is 3, so plus 3. So the y-intercept's 3. And the slope would be negative 6 over 4. Okay. Now I will also accept on that problem negative 3 over 2 because that would be reduced.